I think it's very important for people from the West and the Islamic world to understand the very different ways in which they view these things. In the West, over the last 300 or 400 years, it's as though religion has been privatized. It's something for the individual themselves. It's not really the way society as a whole is run. Whereas in the Islamic world, it's not a separate issue. It's the whole way of being. The word deen is sometimes used to describe it. You translate that into English as religion, you miss some of the importance of this whole concept. And it seemed to me that a conversation between East and West is really important so that we understand the very different bases on which we're operating. And then perhaps we can find an agreed way to function together. Sometimes people see this very much in terms of setting down a series of protocols. But one of the things about people who are passionately committed to their faith is that they get involved emotionally, enthusiastically, in a very lively way in committing themselves to seeing good outcomes. It's not a matter of question of ticking boxes. It is really wanting to see something happen. And so the commitment of people in the faith-based communities to the SDGs is not simply a matter of protocols or legalities or regulations. It is of seeing an outcome which is better for the world and the people that live in it. And I think this is a really important contribution. Well, I think faith-based groups should be encouraged by the fact that the world as a whole is coming round to recognise the importance of an understanding and commitment to each other as people and to the world in which faith-based people believe God plays a part not only as creator but as sustainer, and that to work with him and with each other for a better and more sustainable world is now something that is being adopted by people, whether they come from faith communities or not.
So the faiths have a huge role to play in terms of faith and finance for COP26 because they have such influence and such ownership. If you think about everybody from the laity to the faith institutions, to the overarching institutions, to the development agencies, faiths really have a lot that they own and manage, both in terms of physical assets and financial assets, and they have a lot that they influence through the people who call themselves people of faith. So there's absolutely no way that the faiths can be outside of the conversation. In many ways, they're already in it. What's great about things like Jeffy and Faith Invest and all of these other partners here today is that we're all actively being in it and we're making our voices heard in terms of how we want to contribute to some of the solutions in COP26. One of the very practical steps they can take is firstly, internally, making commitments to not only decide what it is they don't want to invest in, things that should be avoided, but what they actively, positively do want to invest and put their money into, and be part of the co-creation of some of those specific investment solutions that can help money to move.
I think when we look at the ambitions and aspirations of COP26, it's important to bring the faith-based institutions like Islamic banks who have traditionally been aspiring to bring the business in line with the religious aspirations, which also looks at commitments to people and planet as part and parcel of the Islamic banking principles. And by bringing in the faith-based institutions, we can have better alignment in terms of our commitments to climate change, as well as our action towards meeting the climate challenges today. I think there are three areas we can focus on. The first is how to shift the way we do financing today in terms of looking at the what and how and why, and see the impact that the financing is creating both on the people and planet, and to create measurable steps to reduce the negative impacts arising from it. The second one is to also have clear targets in terms of the types of positive impacts that the banks, the institutions will create over a period of time. And the third is to clearly articulate all these targets and have proper reporting so that the commitments and actions are aligned and we can then measure success over a period of time.
I think it's absolutely essential that COP26 addresses issues from a faith-based perspective, because much of the world actually are from a faith-based community and they look at life through a faith-based lens. Much of finance, we talk about Islamic finance, it's growing at an exponential rate, but also the products that people look at and the help that they receive is given through the lens of finance. So through Islamic finance, for example, you have things like charitable giving like zakat, or waqfs, which are tools which can actually assist people. So it's important we address issues by looking at the communities that they're serving. The role Islamic finance specifically can play in advancing the SDGs is actually quite pivotal. Islamic finance by its nature is about ensuring that there's, attributes of sustainability, responsibility baked in. But in addition to this actually is the social outcomes and the good outcomes that can be achieved through Islamic finance. As well as the business element of Islamic finance, there's a huge charitable element that can now be blended into a hybrid form of finance. So we look at zakat, we look at waqf, we look at general sadaqah or charity that's given. It's about actually how do we use these forms of giving and put in a mechanism to actually transform people's lives and achieve a sustainable and social good outcome. Also within this is looking at the environment. When you remove interest from financing, you're moving away from a condition of future discounted value and net present value. And so you're looking at actually enhancing and sustaining the way we produce stuff as well. And this is a huge impact. So Islamic finance touches a lot of these points and actually can have a completely, a completely integrated way of meeting SDG requirements as well. Question, are faith groups doing enough? I would say across the board, we can all be doing a lot more. Because it's something that's come and hit the mainstream fairly recently. I think people are becoming more and more awake to the fact that actually we all have a duty of care and there are better ways of doing things. It's the status quo at the moment that there isn't a consideration for SDGs and the environment in terms of how we do our transactions. But there is a huge responsibility on everyone as information arbitrage decreases, as the world becomes a smaller place, as we learn to interact with each other, and we've seen the rise of social media, which means that actually things can't be hidden and we can see the direct impacts of climate change, then definitely there is a huge onus on everyone collectively taking responsibility, ultimately because we're all inhabitants of the same little island that we call Earth.